great to be here. Federico gave me 10 minutes, and given the size of the audience, I think it would be a great idea to try to keep it short so we can actually engage in a conversation. I don't think there was an audience ever that said, oh, this speech was too short. So I'll try to start with some of my own ideas that I bring from my work with the Alliance of Conservative Reformists in Europe. For those who do not know what the organization is one of the main political movements in Europe. It brings together 27 national parties from across Europe and more than 7 parties from across the globe into an alliance that promotes free market ideas. The main political agenda that the Alliance of Conservative Reformists is pushing for these days in Europe is the European reform on a basis of non-federalist models, which is what you call here in the United States U.S. federalism. It stands for low taxation, limited government, and free market reform. So the main challenge in this discussion is to try and understand what we mean when we talk about Europe. For the purpose of the discussion, let's all agree that we're going to call Europe the 28 EU member states, that most of them are the largest, most advanced nation across Europe. And the debate we're having tonight has 2 assumptions: that the United States is trying or is in the process of becoming more European, and that this European model the United States is trying to become in political and social and economic terms is not just far from ideal, it's actually a recipe for disaster. And I would agree with both those arguments, that the United States is becoming more European, and that we have to try and understand what it is about this European model that Americans tend to find attractive. There's a whole lot of misconception about what the European model looks like. And in this country, you often hear discussions about how, especially on social issues, how the system in the United States is essentially broken, how the social net is gone, and how we should try to readjust and find a system that works closely for the people. And this assumption suggests that we need a bigger government that would regulate economic life to provide for people. However, this narrative, let me bring an example. Working hours of 35 hours per week is something that they do in Sweden. Some people look at the system in Sweden and say, oh, this is the Nordic socialism. We should copy this system. We should try to follow the system because it's more socially equal. And this is a myth. The problem with this myth is that it overlooks the economic stagnation that was produced from these policies. And largely, the reality is that there is no one system in Europe that you can follow. There is no one system that is called European socialism or European liberalism. You have 28 individual member states that each has its own system, either it's economic or political. So you cannot really cherry pick among systems that you like. You cannot choose the Swedish model for social security, but the Greek tax model. So you understand these are 2 different worlds. The EU of safety nets, the EU of protectionism, the EU of free healthcare simply doesn't exist. It's a narrative that a certain political movements are pushing for, both in the EU and the United States. Be under no illusion. Free healthcare and free education doesn't come, you all know it doesn't come for free. And suggesting that copying, mimicking the European model would make Americans strolling down Champs-Élysées at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at a 6-hour working day is unrealistic. It's the free healthcare that is more realistic is being a 67-year-old pensioner in my home country in Greece that has paid 40 years of of contribution in a Ponzi scheme-like system for the state today to be unable to provide for medical expenses and for treatment and for pensions. So in the short term, of course, some of those policies procure positive results, and some of those policies looks easily defensible. But the question is, are they really sustainable? And the answer is no. The answer is not a prediction. We have seen the European model failing, and you don't have to see the European model failing in all 28 member countries. You only need to see the European model failing in one country, and we have many of those examples. Now I'll bring my own example from my home country in Greece, that until the early 80s was a very open free market economy, had huge investments in infrastructure. We had a very productive agricultural sector, factories, and a very thriving shipping industry. They became a member in the European Union in 1981, and I'm not suggesting that the European Union led Greece to become a social paradise. Of course not. However, it fertilized the ground for socialist ideas to become more attractive. And yet we had a socialist government that in only 10 years took one of the most productive economies at the time and moved it from, I want to say 20% of its debt to the GDP to 110 by early 90s. And by the time we became a member in the European Monetary Union, the Eurozone, the debt was close to 120%. What does that say? It says that those expansionary politics, they do procure for immediate results. But when you get the bill, and we got the bill in 2008, we kept expanding our public sector, we kept expanding social welfare benefits, we kept reducing free market reforms. And we ended up with a huge check that overnight we were unable to pay. So Greece became, not technically, but it became a bankrupt country. Of course, someone would say, yeah, but Greece is not the example. America will never become Greece. Well, it can become Italy. It can become France with all those subsidies. The problem is, and I want to finish with that to just have a discussion, is that we have to answer the question, even though that is so obvious that Europe is not working, why is it that it's becoming so attractive here in the United States? And we saw that in the last election. We saw a platform mainly coming from the left that brings the rhetoric and the narrative that a narrative that gains support, and be it Bernie Sanders or be it Elizabeth Warren, they're all suggesting that there is an alternative way to the current system that we need to pursue. And my answer coming from Europe is that there is no alternative. The only alternative is we keep pushing here in the United States and back in Europe for free market reforms, limited government, low taxes, and I want to quote my boss, Daniel Hanna, who leads the Alliance of Conservatives and Reformists, who a few years ago wrote a book, The New Road to Serfdom, a letter of warning to the United States. And when he was asked, he mentioned that what he thinks that is most important and what distinguishes the two polities, the one of the United States and one of Europe, the European Union, is that in your constitutional documents focus on the liberty of the individual, focus on protecting the freedom, while the constitutional documents of the EU, be it the Lisbon Treaty or the Charter of Rights, focuses on creating, and this is the fundamental flaw, it focuses on creating not a free economy and protecting freedoms of the individual, but creating an equal economy where everyone is sort of given the equal opportunity. And with that, I want to give the floor back. I'm happy to take some questions and have a discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you very much.